What's up, everyone? Before the podcast began, I just wanted to do two tribute videos. The first tribute video is before the podcast began. It's for the professors and teachers that was on the podcast. I had a few of their former students just come on and say a few words about them. The last tribute video is after the podcast and it's for all Black educators. We thank y'all. We thank y'all for everything y'all have done. We appreciate all y'all hard work. Thank you and enjoy the podcast.
Hey, Professor Moran, I hope you're doing well. This is a special tribute for you. I appreciate you for teaching me African American history, even going further back into teaching me African history itself. You know, it's great to have someone, that looks like you teaching you your history. So I sincerely appreciate you, and then I'm hoping your new class is enjoying your presence. Thank you.
This is a short tribute video for Professor Moran at the University of Bridgeport. She's definitely one of my favorite teachers. I never had a professor at UB who taught with such passion and vigor for her subject, and definitely had like a drive to teach her students, which I appreciated every time I walked into her room.
Thank you, Mr. C and Ms. Hosan, for everything you did for me and my friends growing up. We wouldn't be here without y'all.
Hey, Mr. Chinky, he is Brother JoJo. Just wanted to say thank you for everything that you've done as a teacher and as a mentor, and everything that you're still doing with the Brotherhood. There's definitely a lot of traits that you have that I feel like I can take with me. But if there's one that really stands out, is just how, even though you're so down to earth, you're still able to lift the spirits of everybody around you, which I think is honestly pretty freaking amazing.
Hey, Miss Hosan, thank you.
Thank you, Professor Nesmith, for all that you taught us and everything you've done. I appreciate you and your work.
I've had the pleasure of taking a course with Latara Nesmith. She definitely stood out to me. She's the second Black professor that I've had so far in the University of Bridgeport. I had her my freshman year, so that was a while ago. But she is the one that inspired me and pushed me in the direction to become a criminal justice minor. Oops. She pushed me in the direction to become a criminal justice minor. And she's the one that showed me that, these children do need our help, and the ones that don't have the privilege to have teachers that are Black and have the guidance and have the assistance and anything that can help them, they do not have these resources. And the fact that we do, we need to be very grateful.
As a fourth-year student, I've had so many different professors. One of the best professors I've had so far was Jill. And that means so much just saying that, because she's one of the very first professors I've had. And what really made her class stick out to me was that first year seminar class had a professor who cared, a professor who was relatable, easy to talk to, passionate, and overall just amazing. I think that Jill is the perfect example of why it's important to have faculty that looks like you on campus.
So this video is for Jill Jamont. So I just want to throw this out there. Really appreciate you. Not only students from the UB community, but from everywhere else. 6 years ago, I was a freshman here at the university, and you was my first advisor. And just going in and out of your office, and I know that I ended up changing advisors, but just being able to see the presence that you left upon me where I was making silly mistakes, and to fast forward now to see the difference that you're making is what speaks volume. Last year I was a graduate assistant at Bates Hall, and you worked there, and just being able to see the students' interactions with you and things like that, where they were coming in for times where they weren't even setting up appointments, that spoke volumes to like the type of impact that you're leaving on the UB community. So from me to you, thank you so much. Flowers to you. Stay blessed, stay healthy, and stay safe.
Welcome to the Cornerstone Talk podcast. My name is Billy. I'm your host. Today we have Cornerstone Courtroom co-hosters. And we also have professors from the University of Bridgeport, as well as Bronx Line High School teacher. So I'm just going to allow them to introduce themselves. Let them
Start. So I'm Mr. C, or Mr. Chinky He. I teach at Bronx Line High School. We also have a brotherhood program for young men and women of color. It used to take place in person after school, but now we do it virtually every week. Thank you for having me, Billy, and co-host.
name is Joe Jaman. I am an FYS instructor at University of Bridgeport. I also teach a graduate class in education psychology, and I've been at UB for I'm going in my 8th year, and the hosts of the podcast have all been in my FYS class, and they've all been exceptional. And I'm not saying that to be kind. And I think that FYS at University of Bridgeport helps students to figure out who they are in college. It's like a foundation or a stepping stone, a launching pad. And I feel like if our 3 hosts and the 2 hostesses, the host and the 2 hostesses tonight, made a very important mark on UB in general, and in their classes in particular, in terms of establishing themselves, establishing their autonomy, and establishing their personality and their creativity.
Yes, I'll go next. I'm Latyra Nesmith. By day, I am an adult probation officer for the state of Connecticut, where I'm currently assigned at the Training Academy, which pretty much means I'm in charge of all the training for anybody hired by adult probation. I've been with the state for 13 years. In addition to that, I'm an adjunct professor at the University of Bridgeport, in which I've been there for 8, teaching youth gangs in addition to drug and alcohol in society. It is an honor and a pleasure to be here. I'm so grateful that you guys contacted me. Looking forward to conversations tonight.
I'm Professor Darnell Moorhand Olufade. I teach part-time at the University of Bridgeport. I teach African American history, parts 1 and 2, meaning African American history to 1877. And then 20th century, or we should say 21st century, African American history. I've been teaching since 2014 at the University of Bridgeport. I have also taught African American history for about 8 years at Glendale Community College in Glendale, Arizona. Taught ethnic studies at Arizona State University, West Campus, which is my alma mater, and have actually taught American history at Broome Community College in Binghamton, New York. So it's American Studies is actually my degree major, and I just made it as African American history as my niche in the field of history. So it's been a pleasure really teaching at the University of Bridgeport, because of the fact that I do have, how could I say it, classes that are very diversified. I have African students, students from the Caribbean, students from the Middle East, and of course our own students from here across the country, and especially here in the Northeast, like Billy. Billy has actually taken my courses. He's in the early course this semester, and he's a very attentive student. I like the fact that he keeps up with the work, but he also asks questions, really, really good questions, because he wants to know. And it helps me a lot when my students come back at me with questions as to what I'm teaching them, to sort of make me think really hard how to keep them in a critical sense of the history. I try to correlate history as much as possible with what took place in the past and exactly what's going on in the present, and how things are somewhat circling about, especially with the argument today that we saw in the news about African American votes are trying to be more or less, the government, the present government is trying more or less to kick them out and say that they are not legal votes. And so we talked about that before in history, didn't we, Billy?
Yep.
Yeah. That's right.
So today's topic is the impact of African American teachers / professors, and also Latinx teachers or professors on students. So our first question, just an intro question. What made y'all want to become teachers / professors?
Good question.
The thing I ever wanted to be when I was a little girl, I wanted to be a teacher. I used to teach my dolls. I used to line them up and teach them. My headboard of my bed, it was this polished wood, and I grind away at the polish until I could get to write in chalk. I may or may not have been punished for that, but that's beside the point. That's the only thing I ever saw myself being in, was a teacher since I was a kid.
I actually started off as an English education major. At some point, I ended up taking a criminal justice class and it totally went left. I graduated, got out of school, and then said, no, I think I really want to be in education. So then I started, I was a permanent sub, actually taught English at Central High School in Bridgeport. I did that for about 1.5 years, and then I was like, yeah, no, this isn't it. It still wasn't, what I wanted. I wanted the connection and the interaction with children, but I didn't want to be, kind of confined to what the school system said I had to teach or how I had to teach things. So I ended up going back into my field of criminal justice. I landed in juvenile detention first, because that's where I originally started with my career in the state. And even still, it was something still there that wanted to educate, and I still couldn't figure out, what that was or how I was gonna go about it. Obviously, you still do mentoring, tutoring and all of that stuff, but it still just didn't give me what I wanted. And my second master's was completed at UB. First, I'm a lifelong resident of Bridgeport, so UB has never been on my radar to even attend. But I ended up completing my second master's degree in counseling at UB. And I reached out to one of my old professors and I had said to her, I really think I want to get into teaching. I don't really know what I'm supposed to do or how this goes, but can you help me? And it was Professor Santee, and she was like, absolutely. She was like, send me your resume. Let me see, what you're doing thus far and how we can make it apply. And sure enough, she connected me with Donna Phillips, and that's how I ended up with my first class at UB. And it's been refreshing. And I tell all my students all the time, coming into it, especially after doing 8 hours at probation, and I'm dealing with clients who, one, don't want to be there, two, most of the time I'm arguing with at some point of the day, to end up on campus with the population of young people who are there because they want to be there, was refreshing. But at the same time, I'm also an HBCU grad. And I think that is very important for our minority students, in particular Black students. I think it's good for them to have that type of experience. And when I was in school, I actually loved my professors, the way they were invested in us, and making sure that we were prepared for the world. And I can tell you, you guys have taken my class. I always tell you, it's not necessarily just about the subject area that I'm teaching in. I'm gonna teach what I'm supposed to teach, but I'm gonna also make it apply to our day-to-day lives. And most of us are coming from the same backgrounds. I can tell you one thing, it is one of the most fulfilling things that I've done. Like, I look forward to the new semester, and you all know at the end of the semester, I'm like, oh, I'm gonna miss you guys, hit me up if you need me. So even when you text me to let me know that you were doing, I'm like, yes, because again, I get that experience of just changing lives. Like, I look at it from, I've been in the human service field for probably about 15 years. I know some of the obstacles and the challenges my clients have, but I also know some of their interactions aren't the most positive when it comes to people who are working in those fields. So to be a person who looks like them, to live in the same city that I work in, to be able to service my direct community and make an impact makes a huge difference. But for me to have an influence over students who are students who are coming into that field changes the game. It gives clients out, a different perspective. You have fresh minds who are coming, who are really looking to help but most importantly, they're understanding. They're empathetic and they're respectful. So that's my little spiel.
I personally went back to school much older than the average student to get my degrees after living in Nigeria, West Africa for 12 years and working there, and then also living and working in England for 6 years. And that was because my late husband, he was achieving his doctoral studies in England. And so I was going up and down in and out of a foreign country. When I came back into the United States in 1987, which being away for nearly 18 years, I realized that I had to sort of like get up to date, and that meant going back into college. And I waited until my eldest son finished with his PharmD degree at the University of Arizona. And that's when I looked at him one evening and said, "That's so great. I'm so happy for you. Congratulations. I'm going back to school." He looked at me like, "To do what, Mom?" And I says, "I'm going to get my degree in history." And he says, "Oh my God." And I started doing it part-time because I was working full-time for medical doctors as their insurance coordinator. And I was just moving along. And the next thing I knew it, I finished and went straight into my master's degree program in educational leadership. And one of my mentors, she had graduated a year before me. And she said to me, "Why don't you do a minor in ethnic studies?" And I said, "Great." And she says, "Because of your experience of living abroad for so many years." I said, "That's fine." And she said, "Also because you were educated in Jamaica, West Indies, for your high school." And I said, "Sure." Jill, I see you looking kind of weird there. Like, what the heck happened there? Yeah, I went to Arden High in Jamaica.
I'm like boop 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 because I'm from Trinidad.
Right. So, and I have West Indian heritage within my mother's family. She was first generation born here in her siblings in New York. So it was like, okay. But when I finished my master's degree, and even before I finished it, a friend of mine, my mentor at ASU, she ran to me because she was working at Glendale Community College teaching African American history, but her real major was African American literature. She ran to me and she says to me, "I got to get out of my contract." And I said, "Excuse me?" And she says, "They won't let me out of my contract. I got a real good job at Mesa Community College full-time teaching African American lit. I need you to step in and do African American history because that's your major, history." And I'm looking at her and I'm like, "I can't do that. I haven't graduated with my master's. What are you trying to do to me?" She says, "Please just go to the dean at the college, sit down, have a chat with them. I'm quite sure they'll take you on." And sure enough, they took me on. And I'm like, "I'm not quite finished with the master's yet." They said, "No, we already know that you're going to finish. Don't worry about it. We've looked you up. We saw your GPA. You're fine. Start." In August of 2002. And I'm like, okay. And that's what I did. And I loved teaching the course. And the reason why I liked teaching the course, it wasn't just the fact that I had such a diversity of students, but I was actually teaching white firemen, white policemen, African American history. History that they had no idea existed. As one said to me one day, "Could you tell me exactly where you're going to start?" And I said, "Excuse me?" And he says, "Yeah, I didn't even know African Americans really had history that was off the plantation." And I said, "Whoa." And I said, "Well, I'll tell you what, I'm going to give you a hint of the textbook, From Slavery to Freedom by John Hope Franklin. And I think you're going to like it." And he says, "Okay." And I says, "And we're starting in Africa." And he stepped back and he said, "In Africa?" And I said, "Why not?" And he said, "Oh my God, does Africa even have history?" And my dean, she was standing there. She was so shocked that this person said this, and I kept quiet. And I said, well, if you're going to do Italian American history, don't you think you might hit Italy somewhere along the line? So if I'm doing African American history, I think I really should start in Africa, because that's exactly where our people come from. And I says, and I'm not going to talk about everybody being a slave either. And that's what really clicked in. And I taught him that semester, and he went back to his police department, and he asked them to have me come and speak to the academy and the blah, blah, blah. And it was something that really opened my eyes, because I'm learning the history as I'm teaching the history. I'm learning how my life, my father's family, who are the true Americans, how they fit into the scheme of things, and how important that history really is. So when I moved into Connecticut in 2012, and I kept thinking to myself, gosh, I mean, I have African American history on my resume. Maybe I need to make some changes to the resume. And all of a sudden, one day, I got this email from Dr. Edward Geist. And I thought to myself, I don't know who this
God
person
rest his soul.
God bless him. That man was beautiful. And he contacted me and he says, do you mind if you could come in and have an interview? And I said, of course. He says, would you like teaching African American history at the University of Bridgeport? I said, sure. And of course, I had to look up the University of Bridgeport real quick to see what the student body was like and whatnot, you know. And I looked at the student body and I thought, okay. And I met him on the campus. And I noticed there were quite a number of African American students walking around the campus. And he says, yes, we have a large population of African American students from all points. And that's the reason why when I saw your name and realized who you are and looked you up, I was like, yes, this is the woman that needs to come here. And that's what put me on the map at UB. I am very, very grateful to have this opportunity to continue teaching my students, students of all walks of life, students who have so much experience themselves in life of all different ages. And again, like I said, the racial and ethnic context of my classes really speaks of what a university college campus and the system should really be. And so, like Latira, I don't know. I mean, they've asked me to come back for the next semester, but let's see what happens with the number of students who enroll into my course. You know, and when I'm teaching 20th century.
My best. I'm gonna make that happen.
Yes, thank you so much. I mean, it's just a case of we need to let everybody. I told somebody one day, and I wasn't joking, that I wish I could hold like a seminar one day with the faculty of UB about African American history. Because there are comments that are still being made. They have no clue what they're talking about. And it's kind of frightening. In 2020, we are still having people look at our students as not being on par, or they have a problem, or this, that, and the other, whereby I find that students of any color, of any race, have problems. Okay, and that's very important for all of us who lecture at UB to deal with. And I see we're dealing with it, that's for sure.
It's pretty similar not backstory, but reasoning as to why I wanted to become a teacher, but that didn't come so much later. Originally, I never wanted to be a teacher. Like, I could never see myself being a teacher. I had a really horrible high school experience. I think I had 2 good teachers that like really cared. But for the most part, it was a really bad experience. So I was like, I never want to come back here. But I knew that I wanted to be in a position to help other people. When I was younger, I was part of a leadership program with the YMCA. And my mentors in that program really took me from not believing in myself or thinking that I can achieve certain things, and they really helped me see my potential. And I knew one day that I wanted to be in a position to be able to push other young people forward the way I was pushed forward. Because just that time in my life, like just having somebody there saying, hey, you can do this, you can do that, like you just have to believe in yourself, you just have to work hard and things like that. It really like started pushing me and started getting giving me inspiration to like see what else I could do. So originally I was when I was 19, I got a job at a law firm. And I was a paralegal for about 7 years. I went to John Jay College. I was a criminal justice major. And I was planning on going to law school, and somebody said, hey, become an English major. You know, law schools really like that. So I became an English major instead. And then as I was an English major, I really just fell in love with the subject. I fell in love with, you know, dissecting novels and just the conversations we were having in the class. But I still didn't know that, you know, that's where I was headed. I was still in my mind headed to law school until my last senior seminar. So I had a professor, her name was Professor Baz Dressinger, and she started so instead of the pipeline, so she started a program in which if you were in Rikers, you could start gaining college credits, and once you got out of Rikers, you would automatically be enrolled into John Jay. But her course, it really showed us the injustices of the justice system, right? And it really woke me up to the point where I was like, I would leave that class and call somebody to continue the conversations we were having in that class. And just because I was so mind blown, and it just shook me, and it was like, you know, I just didn't know a lot. Like I didn't learn anything about what was really happening in society until I'd probably say maybe my last year of college. So my mindset started to change, and I had to figure out, you know, what did I really want to do? I started losing passion for law because I ended up working at 3 different law firms, and all of it was pretty much the same. And I just didn't really enjoy what was happening behind the scenes. Not that all law firms are the same, but just my experience at the ones I worked at. It was just some stuff going on behind the scenes I didn't personally and morally feel comfortable with. So I had to leave that. And when I left that, I originally started my master's in social work. And I did that for a year at Brooklyn LIU. And then the teachers went on strike, or the professors went on strike there because of the contract disputes. So then they put in student teachers, but we were still paying the same amount of money for the student teachers, and nobody knew what was going on. And I was like, man, I'm not going to go into debt for this. Like I couldn't do it, and I couldn't wait to see what happened because I just wasn't in that kind of position. My wife had just done the teaching fellows, and she was in her first year of teaching, and she works for District 75, which is students with special needs. And I saw what she was doing, and I was like, man, like I think I might be able to do that as well, and I might enjoy that. So I joined the teaching fellows, but I joined it for while I work in District 12 now, and I did teaching fellows as an English candidate. And then I graduated, and then fast forward to my first year of teaching, I know Miss Hosan just joined at the perfect time too. What up, Hosan? She also teaches at Bronx Latin. Fast forward to my first year of teaching, and I just didn't feel like I could do it. And I was scared, and I felt stupid. I felt like I was like, man, like I'm in front of these kids, like I'm responsible for them. Like I could barely speak myself. Like I was like, everybody in the teaching fellows tells you like your first year of teaching is going to be hell. It's going to be hell. It's going to be hell. Don't do anything. Don't do anything but teach. It's going to be hell. So the teaching fellows kind of like puts that in your head. So you're walking in there like really scared and nervous all the time. And I just didn't have any teachers growing up that really looked like me or spoke like me or came from where I came from. So I had what Hosan told me later that I didn't know about. It was called imposter syndrome. Because after I broke down to her one day, she was like, well, this is what you're going through. I went through it as well. I was probably going to quit you know, we started in September, I was probably going to quit teaching in November, December. And Hosan really kept me in the game. And like, I wanted to teach my way. Admin was telling me one thing, I wanted to do something else. And Hosan taught me how to teach what I'm supposed to teach, while at the same time teaching real life and teaching what I wanted to teach and connecting to the students the way that I would naturally connect to them. So instead of doing the teaching fellows way, where I'm like trying to like be super proper and, you know, have this like kind of wall between me and the students and not give them any personal information, things like that. Like, I don't give too much personal information, but I let them know where I come from. Like, I grew up in New York City housing. I, you know, grew up in a home that we didn't have a lot of food, and not that all my students are like that, but the ones that are, like, I can really bond with them and I can help them, maybe give them some advice on how to like overcome those kinds of things. And she showed me how to do that, and she showed me how to twerk my curriculum so that I'm meeting what I need to meet for administration and not getting in trouble, while still being able to reach the kids in my kind of way. So I gotta say, like, I didn't know where my life was headed. I didn't want to be a teacher, but being a teacher has been the best thing I've ever done. Like, when we were in person, I miss it so much. It's crazy. Like, you have a genuine laugh every day. Of course, you have your kids that stress you the hell out, but you have a genuine laugh. Like, I genuinely love my kids, and like, we bond. Like, Billy's my friend now. Like, I told Billy maybe 2 years ago. So it's just really nice to have that experience, and I'm glad like I ended up in this position, and I'm glad I ended up with a mentor and Hosan.
I'm just gonna have Miss Hosan introduce herself. Hosan.
Hi guys, what's up? So I'm sorry for joining late. I was in commute. So I'm assuming the question is, and you can correct me, Bill, tell me the actual question, but I'm assuming it's why I decided to teach, or like, is that the question?
Yeah. Like, what made you want to become a teacher?
Yeah. Right. So for me, I felt like my life was always pulling me towards education. It was not my first career. My first career was in publishing. I was a proofreader and a developmental editor and acquisition editor. And pretty much when I graduated college, I was on a really fast track up the editorial ladder, doing things that like 21 and 22-year-olds shouldn't be doing. At the same time, on the home front, my youngest brother was in the process of and eventually did drop out of high school. And I was constantly getting called in. So I'd be at the office working on like these $1 million book deals, and then also navigating like taking time off and going up to his high school, talking to his deans. And I remember one time during one of his meetings with the deans, you know, he's like, "Yo, these teachers just don't care." And I could feel that, right? Like, he had all his Regents exams. He just really was engaged, and he was like, "So you do it." So I like challenges, you know, and I did it. I joined the fellows program, and when I joined, I was like 22, and I was like, I'm gonna just stay for 7 years. Like, this is gonna be tough. Like, it's not probably gonna be for me. I'm gonna just do it for like a little while, pay my back, prove my brother wrong, and get out of here. This is my 14th year now, and it's really, really hard for me to even consider leaving the classroom. Like, I'm in my 4th year of my doctorate program, and everyone's trying to push me to take a sabbatical and get out the classroom and move on. But for me, the real work is here in the classroom. To be real, like, you know, Billy knows I'm all the time. I refuse to teach. I refuse to move out of the Bronx. I refuse to not teach it because the talent pool is always so little, right? Everyone, they use the Bronx, these programs like the Teaching Fellows program to get their foot in the door. It's like a stepping stone. They go on to law school, they go on to doctoral programs, and they leave us behind. They practice on our kids and they leave. It's no different than, you know, the Tuskegee experiments. We're always an experiment. So for me, I'm here because, one, when I was growing up, it took me like years before I had a Black teacher. And I remember how I was just hanging on every word. Now in my doctoral program, like, it's a fight to find any professors who look like me, right? And that's why I'm here, because of kids like Billy. Like, there are, you know, like Anthony says, the tough kids where, you know, admin's just on your nerves and you're always in trouble. I stay get written up, you know, like, stay not doing what I'm supposed to be doing. What I'm supposed to be doing is passing along the knowledge and making sure that there aren't that many kids who have to go through their schooling without seeing a mirror, without having an escape, right? Like when Anthony came into the building, like I'm real protective of my space, right? Because I feel like a lot of educators come into these Bronx buildings with their own purposes, right? Like they're using our kids usually. But when he came in, like literally, like the transformation that you could see in the students is something that no amount of Danielson, no amount of like double mob technique, no amount of professional development can teach. And that's why we need people like our people to teach our kids, because there's something about the cultural path, because like critical theory says that, like, you know, we really need to think critically and think more thoughtfully about who we're putting in front of our children, right? And there's something that no amount of fellow training teach you, just need to be here, and that's why I'm here. It's my commitment.
I would say so Song was my English teacher, 11th and 12th grade. And she was just one of those teachers who push you. She's one of those teachers where she see potential in you and she'll push you. She said, "I'm 45s." So she always made sure our assignments was done. We was always scared of 45, so we made sure we always got our assignments done. And yeah. So next question.
Okay, the next question, a lot of you guys kind of you touched on, as far as what is it like being in the minority group and still trying to educate other minorities. So as far as like you guys are like Black and Latino, so how is it, as one of you guys said, I don't remember, but teaching and trying to still teach us what we need to know and having to follow that curriculum? How do you get your point across and still do your quote unquote job as far as curriculum is concerned? As far as like also the having to deal with those people, having to deal with others who don't look like you, and trying to say like, hey, this also matters. Like I matter, and what I have to teach matters.
When I got to University of Bridgeport, I thought, okay, this is an urban campus in an urban neighborhood, so it should be easy. But it was quite the opposite, because the culture at UB is not Black African American. So I found myself often being the only Black person in the room when I went to meetings, and when they talked about how they used to be before UB in the 90s, when they went bankrupt and there was the strikes and everything. UB really catered to a whole different crowd. It was like they wanted the good old boys from Rhode Island and the good parts of New York and whatever. And the faculty who had been there for a long time they still do to today. They grieve the loss of that student. And I've sat in a lot of meetings where they talk about, oh, if we could just recruit the right student, then we will get the right GPAs and we will get the right retention numbers and things like that. And I've always been very strong in my beliefs, and so it was difficult in the beginning. I found myself sometimes the only voice on the other side of the table. Not that I'm scared of that, because I can be quite aggressive, and I do not waver in my beliefs ever, even if it makes me unpopular. So it was very, very challenging when I got to University of Bridgeport. I faced a lot of ethical dilemmas as an administrator, and I almost lost my job a couple of times because of my stance. But the one thing I know is student, not student services, but student life. One thing I know is, the one thing I know for sure, as Oprah would say, is how to address the issues and the challenges and the concerns of students of color. So that's where I dig my heels in. And even if I become the unpopular voice in the room, and even if I prescribe to, or they prescribe me to, the voice of the angry Black woman, I'll take that, because I am unwavering when it comes to my students, and the 3 young people in this room know that. I don't know if they do, but I will advocate for a student to the point where I will end up in front of the president and my job will be on the line, because when it comes to their rights and their perpetuating a belief system of them being equal and not other, I will not step down. And so when I just came to UB in like 7 and something years ago, UB was a very, very different place. And I was the big girl with the big hair who had a big voice and would not step back from the fact that these students deserve to be here, and they have a voice, and they deserve an education, and they are smart, and they're kind, and they're creative, and you're not doing them any favors by them being here because you don't have the good old boys of Rhode Island. And so now that we have changed so much, and we can have this kind of symposium with these young people, and they don't have to apologize for themselves because they don't even know that there was a time when they would not have belonged. I feel as if all of us as administrators and all of us as educators, because I've heard what you guys have said before me, I feel like if we have broken that 4th wall, I feel like if we've made a difference, and we dug our heels in and we stood our ground, and we made sure that these students who they consider to be throwaway kids, like students who, you know, they came for a semester or 2 and then they couldn't be educated and they left, and you know, they just took their financial aid for a year. We have made such a huge difference in terms of what they are capable of and who they are as people, and the fact that their culture and their funds of knowledge matter. That I am very proud of the work that we have done collectively as a collective, and I'm happy that as a professor of color, as a Black Caribbean faculty member of color, who I have been in meetings where people have made fun of the way I say certain words at UB because I'm not from here. And I had to always wear on my sleeve and on my collar and on my head the fact that I don't have to look a certain way to be smart. That now I'm proud of even this very podcast, where I feel like if the mantle is being passed on to another generation and they get it, and I don't have to worry anymore.
For the next person, so I want to talk a little bit about UB. So we as UB students, UB student population is about 45% African American, about 20% Hispanic, 20% like white. So like the student body population is very diverse. However, when you look at the faculty ratio, as she stated, before even I came here, I looked at the faculty ratio, it was about 78% white, and about 5 to 6% Black or like other races. I've been, this is my 5th semester, junior year, so I took about 26, 27 courses, and I have about 5 African American teachers. These are 3 of the African American teachers I took, and I had 2 more. Roxanne Cantor Walker and Elroy Douglas, and it's like shout out to y'all, because I feel like whenever we have a teacher of color, we connect with them more in a sense. Y'all push us more because y'all know what it's like to be African American. Y'all know what it's like to have to push through and work twice as harder. Yeah, so thank you.
I also wanted to make a comment, Jill. I remember in one of our classes, you told us about an experience you had with like a white coworker, and he basically just didn't respect what you had to say or your opinion. And you instead like you went to another room and you like calmed down, and you came back, and then you just made your point, and you were always just so graceful, and you just taught us like it doesn't matter. If we know we have it in us that we can do whatever we want to do, no matter what no one else says. And like I love coming to class and seeing your hairstyles and your outfits. Me and Corinne would be so excited. Like, oh she mad cool. It just makes me so happy, and thank you so much for really like letting us know that if we want to do it, we can do it, and don't let anyone stop us, and to keep pushing no matter what. Thank you for that.
So we kind of like want to give our little spiel as students. So, yeah. A little spiel for us from kindergarten up until high school. We don't see a lot of African American or Latinx teachers. I was graceful enough in kindergarten and first grade. I had 2 Black African American teachers each. But as the years go by, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, none, 6, about 1 or 2, 7th, none, 8. And we get to high school, and it's like, again, the student body doesn't. I don't know how to explain it, but
the ratio and the teachers don't add up.
The racial part just doesn't add up. But the very few African American Latinx teachers I had in high school, as you can see, Mr. C and Miss Osang, they kind of like built us. We kind of built that bond, and they pushed students to keep going. So in a sense, Miss Osang and Mr. C prepped me to go to college, and now I have met these 3 professors, and they like continue to mantle. Like representation is very important because we see that y'all are teachers, and we enjoy coming to your class, and we want to learn, and we want to kind of like be like yeah. Yeah.
So aside from, I feel like I was gifted the experience to have African American teachers from pre-K to freaking my senior year of high school. I think I had some troublesome years in middle school where it was just like a sprinkle, of Caucasian teachers because they came to our school with an agenda per usual to kind of like take over and remove the agenda for us specifically, you know what I'm saying? Because we had teachers teaching us, African American history in the curriculum of the regular stuff. So I feel like that was really good for me, but I feel like we don't have that often. Like not everyone could experience that. And while that's sad, but it was really good. Like my high school was in the dead smack of downtown Brooklyn. I'm not sure if y'all know about downtown Brooklyn, but it's like the Caucasian population is very, very high over there. So my school is at the end of the block on Clinton Hill. So every day coming to school and leaving school, they were just watching us, as we thrive, as African-American students walking down the blocks, the streets. And it was just like, we're trying to be strong. They're looking at us like we're wrong for being in their area. So that, it was good though. It was a wonderful experience. Kindergarten to high school. That was good. I'm happy I got to experience that. And then now you guys, that's even better as I grow older.
So I grew up in Long Island. So it's where I lived, it was very diverse, kind of like the school, but the teachers were just all white. So I didn't see a Black teacher till like 6th grade, and that was a substitute. So it was very hard to like relate. And like I remember in elementary school, there were 2 Black women teachers, and like I wanted to be in a class so bad, but I didn't have them. So it was really like sad. But in high school, it was like I saw a lot of people that looked like me, but the teachers didn't look like me. So they didn't care about us. The curriculum didn't pertain to us. It was kind of like if you weren't in their little circle or, it didn't matter. They didn't really care about us. They would let us get by, not doing their work and still pass us. So to be able to come here and have professors that really care, even if it is just a few, like to know that there is someone out there, like that helps a lot to be on this platform. Like I really thank Billy as well for having these conversations and giving us this platform and inviting, me to come along and also speak and listen to you guys. And thank you guys for being here as well.
Well, as Billy knows, when I teach African American history, I do teach and hone in very, very well on the factors of education of African Americans. And I'm talking about during the time of slavery and also during the time after slavery. Because during slavery, we do have Africans in America who were educated, especially here in the Northeast, as far back as the 1700s. There wasn't a lot of African Americans being educated at the time, because even in the Northeast and parts of the Midwest, the schools were segregated, in other words. The same thing, especially in the southern states, and I'll say the 11 southern states, the schools were definitely segregated, and it was against the law in the South to even teach Black people how to read and write and how to do arithmetic, the simple basic factors of education. And I teach that and hone in on that specifically because I would need my students of today to understand the importance and the fact that they have this opportunity to learn, to be in the university system. Because at one stage of the game, we couldn't even enter universities. That's the reason why HBCUs, historical Black community colleges or universities, were actually established in the latter 1800s and into the 1900s, okay, the 20th century, specifically to educate ourselves. Because after slavery in 1865, it was extremely important that the 4 million Black people who were enslaved in this country, they needed to find a way of assimilating into the white society that they had to live in. And education was the key. And it's just so hard at times for us as African American professors to get students to understand, look, you may not want to get up early in the morning and attend a 7:30 a.m. course. Guess what? We did it. We had no choice. I remembered when I had to attend a 7:30 a.m. college English class, which I knew I did not need, but I had to have it in order to go through my degree program. So I got up and I did it. And the teacher was complaining, seriously, this white teacher. But she made it to class, we made it to class, we did what we had to do. And that's why I'm not really tough, but I'm constantly sending out emails, constantly letting my students know, you're in my course, I care for you. I need to give you a good grade, because that grade is what pushes you into a higher level of higher education. There are those of you who may be in your first degree programs, you're not thinking of the master degree programs, but you will be thinking of the master degree programs. And I have to prove to you that you can do it. And it's not a case because I did it, it's because I know that you can do it. And I've got to help you in that direction. That is where we're going to see the change. It's going to be you younger people who will be the more Black professors, okay, and engineers and everything else. Because as old as I am, and I'm older than most of you attending this evening, I could see by going to school late in life, I could see what was going to happen 20 years after I had even started my degree program. I could see where they were gearing our people of color in the society to be only in the service industry. They were making it more difficult to give out financial aid, more difficult to bring you or encourage you from high school into community colleges to even seek a higher education on a university degree level. And it was one of my own white professors, she pointed this out to me one day, and I looked at her so strange, and she said to me, think about it, sit down and look, and you will realize what the agenda is, the broad agenda in this American society is. And so those of us who are of color, who are teaching in the university systems, there's only 5.2% professors Black professors teaching in this country, 5.2% of us. So we have to really, when we have the opportunity and we have Black students in our class, yes, we're going to make it more difficult. We're going to keep you at par. We have to keep you at that higher level because you are our future. We have no choice. We have no choice. It's as simple as ABC. And UB, like I said, is just great as far as I'm concerned, because we can watch your progress with ease, okay? And as you come into our classes, we can sort of like, if you have a problem, we know how to guide you where you can seek help even while you're taking our courses to improve. And I've done that with some of our students. But it's mind-blowing because so many of our Black students are creative, are highly intelligent. And I can tell you that because I'm teaching all other students from different other races and backgrounds. And so when I get your papers, your essays, and you're really out of the box with sort of coming back at me with what I am telling you teaching you in my courses, it's really wonderful. It's absolutely wonderful. And so I always encourage my students of color to hang in there. Don't come to me and talking about you quitting. Quitting for what? That's my first question. Quitting to do what? Where are you going? Because you have to have this opportunity and take it and run with it. That degree, that paper in your hand is a ticket to upward movement. It lifts you up. Your standard of life, your standard of living, and it puts you at par with other white counterparts in this society. Because as you said, you see where some teachers, they didn't care when you were in high school, that you're an African-American student, they just sort of like zoned out on you because they felt as though you had no future. You have a future. You have a future. And once you're here at UB, any of us who are African-American or Black professors, we're going to make sure you continue with that future. We don't have a choice. We don't sleep at night if you're not doing well. Trust me, we do not sleep at night because we know that you can do it. You understand what I'm saying? That's why you're here. That's why you're in the university system. It's because you can do it. Don't let anybody fool you.
I know Professor Jamont made reference to UB in the 90s. I'm a lifelong resident of Bridgeport. So, and I think I might have even mentioned it in some of my classes. While in high school, first off, you knew right off the rip, UB was not for you. Literally. That was the culture of the city. You don't go to the UB. If you did go to UB, it was kind of like, why are you there? You're not supposed to be there. They went through that whole bankruptcy. They ended up getting shut down. And then I stumbled across their counseling program. And I was like, when did UB ever even become, a thing again? Because I came out of a generation where that was not even an option, right? Coming back as a professor, I had no idea how many Black students were on campus. I ended up, one of my students invited me, she was like the president of the Black Student Association or something like that, and they did something for Black History Month. She was like, come on, Professor, I just need you to be there so you can see, I want you to, just be involved, just come. So I said, okay. I said, well, I'll get there. When I got there, I was amazed, first off, that it was a pocket of kids, Black kids on the campus, other than the students that I had in my class, I didn't see them, right? Mm-hmm. There's Deltas, there's AKAs, I'm like, wait, where am I? They're strolling. It was like a fashion show / something else. And they're strolling through. And as an HBCU grad, I'm like, oh my God, I'm home. You know, granted, I live in Bridgeport. I'm from Bridgeport, but I am home. This is like, where have you guys been? Where have you been? It was in that moment, I was like, okay, I've been here, but I've been sort of isolated. Again, I'm not on campus full time. I'm not there during the day. I'm coming in the evening where there's nobody. So my perspective is totally different. I'm not sitting at that table. You know what I'm saying? My voice isn't going to be heard. So I took the role of, when you're in my class, you are in my class. I'm your mama, I'm your auntie, I'm your aggravating big sister, because I am going to pull you through until you get to where you're supposed to be.
That's right.
And you all that you've had me, I will lecture you, I will curse you out and tell you I love you in the same sentence. You're going to give me my paper. I don't care what's going on. We're going to figure it out. Do you need an extension? Because I need my stuff. It's very important, you know, and I thank you, Professor Jamont, because you're the one that's at the table. You're having those conversations. It's not necessarily comfortable. You know, somebody has to lead the pack. And for those of us who aren't seen,
right,
you don't know what's even being done. You know what I mean? From the perspective of being at my full-time job, and I've talked to you guys about this even in the previous podcast that I did with you, I am the one at the table. And not only am I the one at the table, I'm the young Black one. You know, so it's like, who the heck is she? I'm in the white boys league. You know, there's those moments where they all kind of like, and who she thinks she is? You know, when I had my long dreads, or if I'm wearing my big afro, and I'm who I am. And you all know that. I tell you all the time, listen, Ratchet TV is coming out. You cannot email, you know, text me or email me during this time. I'm who I am. And I think it's important that you all see that. You know, it's okay to be you and still thrive within your professions. It's okay to be you and, you know, still learn to find your niche or create a path for yourself. Because let's be honest, there's no path for us. They set a path, but it's on the dirt road. They're not expecting us to hit the pavement and keep it moving. So, you know, even my first semester there, and I used to always make a point when I would come in the first day of school, I would dress regular. I'm like a student. I'm in my little hoodie and my jeans, or, you know, my Uggs or my Timbs or whatever the case may be. I go into class, I put my stuff in, and I kind of just leave just to kind of see who walks through the door. And then I come in and they're like, oh, wait, she's the professor? Yeah, it's me. But it's attainable. You know, I'm not too far from you. You know, I just turned 38. You can do it. We can be in those spaces. We can be in those places, and they will have to learn to deal with it. Mm-hmm. That's just what it is. Mm-hmm. I worked as a Bell commissioner. I worked as a Bell commissioner down in Stanford, and I've had this conversation with you guys before. I'm young. I'm like 25. Long dreads, and here I am just passing out PTAs, promises to appear, where they were used to locking our folks up and putting bond on them. And I'm like, that's weed. It's not that deep. You know, again, I came out of a different environment. My coworker and I, we were the same age. The only difference was white male, Black female. You know, there were moments where people were always challenging who I was, why I had the job, how'd I get there, what's my credentials? You know, she's the secretary. She can't be the real Bell commissioner. And I'm like, oh, well, you gonna see, because you're gonna need me. I'm the one that's setting your bar, bro, whether you want me to or not. And if you don't want to go along with it, okay, cool. Your Honor, client was non-compliant during the interview.
Oh, dear.
I'm not going to argue with it. But it is very important for me to be on campus and to play that role, because I know you need me. You know what I'm saying? I know you need me. And guess what? I tell y'all all the time, I need you. It's a shared learning environment. I'm not coming in here telling you all I'm an expert, because I'm not. There's some experiences that you have that you're going to school me on. Again, you're a part of a different generation. So there's some slang that's there that I don't know. There's some dances out there that I might not know about. You're going to be the one that's going to teach it to me. Because when I do deal with my other kids, and even my own biological children, you don't put me one up on somebody else. You know, I'm able to handle things a little different. And I think that a lot of my career has been solely based off of pulling somebody else in. We need you. The world needs you. Even though they tell you they don't want you, trust me, they do. They want everything about you. They're just fearful of it. But you have to recognize your own power, and you have to be you authentically and make it do what it do. You know what I mean?
I had what I wanted to say, but what I wanted to say is I was invited to this as a speaker or whatever, but I'm really taking everything in, and just hearing you all own your accomplishments is because I feel very weird sometimes talking about, okay, well, I've done this and I've done this and I've done this. It just makes me feel weird, but I know that I have to get to the point in which I'm like, no, like, this is what I've done and this is why you should value me as an educator. And I wish Hossam was still on the call, because like she helped me see that as well. But I think the question was, how do you feel as a minority teacher teaching minorities, right? I just have a real big problem with the word minority, because that word was placed on us, wasn't selected by us. And it makes us seem less than. So I don't view myself as a minority. I don't view us Latinx or African Americans as minority. I view us as the majority. And I think that's something that we have to spread and make our students aware of. Like, you're not, they're trying to make you feel like you're part of this little tiny thing, but you're not. Like, we are everywhere. We are part of everything. And we should be everywhere, right? There shouldn't be any more posts on social media, first Black this, first woman this, first Asian this, first Latinx this. Like, that should not happen anymore. We're in 2020, about to head into 2021. Like, what's going on? Yes, we should celebrate it 100%. Celebrate it, love it, let it make you happy, be happy about it. But it's still very weird that there's a first anything anymore. So I don't feel that I am a minority, although, like, oftentimes people use that phrase. I don't say anything, but just valuing myself as an educator, like teaching students of color. Like,
I'm gonna say this, Anthony. You said, I don't think I do anything incredible in the class.
That's what you're doing.
The proof is Billy. That's what it is. What you don't see as your mark as being incredible, your students see as giant strides. Right. So you might not feel as though you don't see it directly, or there's nothing tangible. You're not getting anything, or the reward, or nobody patting you on the back to say, great job, you're doing good, you're doing this, you're doing that. But you got students who are no longer your students still connected to you, which speaks volumes of your work, and it speaks volumes of your character. Right. And what I will say is, oftentimes we dumb ourselves down because we're trying to fit the mold, and it's innate. It happens. We do that because it's like, it's like a protective factor. We don't want to get hurt in the process of whatever. You don't want to be disappointed. I'm telling you, I don't even know you. What, I've known you 2 hours, an hour and a half. You've made your mark, brother. Whether you want to see it or whether anybody in your building's patting your back, you've done that just by looking at Billy as a representation of that. You also triggered a memory for me when I first started teaching in high school. So I'm also a graduate of Bridgeport Central High School, and I had 32 kids on my roster. So I get to the classroom, and it was like 27 seats. So I'm like, it's not enough chairs in here. What are we going to do? Blah, 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 blah. And I go and I make a complaint. Listen, I need more desks in the class. It's not enough for the students that I have. And the administrator said to me, don't worry about it. You're never going to get all 32 of them in there. And chances are, you probably won't even get 20. And I took that comment personally, simply because 4 years prior, I sat in that same seat. Literally. I walked the same hall, literally. And that became that was my aha moment. Like, they're really against us. So I made it a part of my agenda. Every day I hunted every student down that was on my roster. I would run up on them at the locker. Excuse my French, get your ass in class. I'm proving the point. And they're like, miss, you bugging. I'm like, I'm not bugging, because the reality is they want us to fail. And it's the teachers that really care, that are really invested, who really want to make a difference and pull people up. So now I got 32 kids in this class every day. What you gonna do? I need desks. They can't sit on the heaters. They can't sit on the windowsills. They can't do, whatever the case may be. That was part of my reason for leaving the school system then. Because I was like, I'm not gonna keep having this fight where people are telling me we're not worthy enough. This is a city that's predominantly Black and Hispanic. How the hell you gonna tell me don't expect anything else from them? And I'm from here. And I'm the same student who y'all gave me a diploma a couple years ago. So what was your expectation of me? But I'm sorry, I didn't want to, cut anybody else off, but I needed you to know, don't ever think that whatever you're doing is not that great, because you're doing it. And the proof is in the pudding by way of your students.
Thank you.
The whole agenda has to have a massive overhaul, because we're going through this constantly. I remembered when I taught my American history course at Broome Community College in upstate New York in Binghamton. One day, one semester I entered the classroom, right? Nobody was in the classroom because I got there early. Putting my name and everything up on the board. 2 white students walked in. They saw me up at the front. Next thing I heard one of them say to the other, "She can't be the professor." Now I'm standing in the front of the classroom, writing my name and everything on the whiteboard, okay? Other students came in, sat down quietly. I turned to everybody and I said, "Good morning. I'm Professor Darnell Moorhand Olufade." The 2 that came in early, they sort of like shook. And I thought to myself, can you imagine? This is now what? At that time it was, I think, 2010. A Black professor walks into a college classroom and the students coming in are saying to themselves, and even out loud for me to hear, "She can't be the professor." Then who in the world would be the one standing up in the front of the classroom writing their name and stuff on the board? It's mind-boggling, absolutely mind-boggling. And for you are trying your best with your students, you understand what I mean? To help in all ways across the board, not just teach, but in other factors, because you care for your students. And yet they're sitting down as the so-called administration, finding ways to cut you out, to cut you down, to throw you from one angle to the next. And that's the reason why I teach African American history and enjoy teaching it, because I point this type of situation out to my students in the course. So they'll understand what they can be going through in this society, but like to do so. It helps your students to progress, and that's what you care about. And that is the difference mostly with those of us who are teachers of color on all the different levels of education, from kindergarten up. That is the difference. And we don't have a choice. We have to keep people like Billy and his 2 colleagues, his 2 peers there, moving. Because they're going to be in a position perhaps sometime in their lives where they're going to teach. They're going to step up to the plate and they're going to teach, and they're going to be teaching Black American people, people who are of Hispanic descent, people who are of East Indian descent, Middle Eastern descent, whatever. But they're going to know the importance of being around those of us who go through this system of education in America that can be very heart-rending and disturbing. That is the agenda. They do not wish us to learn, to move on.
So I'm sorry, guys. I don't mean to interrupt, but I gotta get back to daddy duty. My wife has been very kind.
Sure enough.
For the last whatever amount of time we've been here. I just want to say thank you, Billy, for having me, and it was beautiful to hear everybody speak and share your stories. And I appreciate the knowledge that I got to receive during this podcast. And this is my son, Cole. Say hi, baby.
CJ. So we
Hey,
his name is Cole Justice Chinky.
Hi. Okay.
But yeah,
Hey.
everybody, thank you and have a good night.
Good night.
So
You too. Thank you. Bye.
before the podcast comes
He's
on.
cute.
Yeah, okay.
I feel like I had the unique perspective of being both a lecturer and an administrator. I'm originally an administrator. I came in as an administrator, and I got to see what Billy is talking about. Like, why wouldn't you want your students to do well? Why wouldn't you want your students to excel? And why wouldn't you want students of color in particular to do well? And what I have learned from being an administrator is there is a pervading culture that is very hard to penetrate and change, and it comes with the institution. And the institution that we are all a part of was originally they originally upheld a culture that was different from the colored faces in this room, and they grieved for it, like I said earlier, and they wanted it back. The reason why they had to entertain so many students of color is because these students came with financial aid packages that could keep them afloat financially. So it was a business decision to have students of color come to the school. And while on the one hand they needed students of color, on the other hand they resented having to need them. And so I came into the University of Bridgeport as a retention specialist, and I was hired as a result of when they had to have their program evaluation and their accreditation assessed. The accreditors told them that they needed a retention specialist. But this is a story that I don't tell often. I came into the University of Bridgeport as a retention specialist, but they only hired me because they were told to do so, and they did not want me to really penetrate the barriers of what was necessary for University of Bridgeport to retain Black students. They hired me as a bubblehead. And it's interesting and curious because when they interviewed me, the people who interviewed me at the committee level were excited for me to come in because I had experience with at-risk students and students of color. But really the agenda of the university at large, they were just fulfilling a mandate, and they did not want me to really be effective. And so let me give you an example. You are hired and you are told that you report to the provost, but in 6 months of being in a position, the provost has never communicated to you, not one time. And when you email him, he ignores you. So I was a placeholder, really, because they were told they needed to hire me. And so it was so frustrating to me because that's not how I work. And I thought that they were excited as I was to work with students and get them engaged and get them to persist and to graduate, that when I got in and I realized what was really going on, I sunk into a very deep depression. And one time I was talking to my mentor, and she said to me, she said, do it anyway. Do what you know how to do. And so I built a program for students who were academically separated, and I built a support program for them by myself. She said, do what you know how to do. I didn't have a budget. I had no staff. I was reporting to no one. And I could come to work at 9 and leave at 10, and no one would notice. So I had to dig deep into my consciousness of what I believed in and how I felt about my students, and say, I'm gonna do this anyway. And I did. And I built a program for students who are at risk and who were academically separated. And I called it the Step Up program. And my mentor told me, she's like, do what you can do without a budget, because I had no budget. And you in the sticks when you're an administrator with no budget. And so I did it anyway, and I just dealt with what I knew how to do, which was meeting the students and talking to them and trying to negotiate terms with them and helping them navigate obstacles and stuff. And so I kept records. I kept good records. And when they were ready to fire me after a year, they called me and they asked me, what have you done for yourself? With nothing. And I did a report on the Step Up program that I did with zero budget, just on my own grit and on my own my own initiative and my mentor. And then they were going for a Title III grant to get money to have the exact same program that I did with nothing. And they said to me, please send me your numbers. Like all of a sudden they act like if, they were in on it, and this was what they asked me to do. They're like, please send me your numbers so we can report it to the Title III grant. And I'm like, bet. You ain't said nothing but a word. So I sent it to them and they put it in their grant and they got the grant. They got the grant, the Title III grant, to do what I was doing for free. Well, aside from my salary, right? And you know what they did? They created a whole academic advising center, which these 3 students know about, and did not include me in it. And they hired a director for it and didn't ask me to be the director. And so they got thousands and thousands of dollars from the federal government based on a program that I did when they thought I was going to fail. And then they did not ask me to be a part of it, but I didn't care. You know why I didn't care? Because the point is this: any student can walk onto the second floor of the library, which is what they now call the Heckman Center, with those light, bright, and 3 shades of white academic advisors, and get help. You know why? Because I wouldn't give up. And you know what I did? I volunteered my services for the Heckman Center. I have a whole office in the Heckman Center. Now, I have 2 offices, the one where they thought I was going to fail and the one where they succeeded without me. And I was like, I don't care. As long as my students, any student, whether it be a student of color or any student, could walk up on that second floor and say, I need to speak to someone, and someone will come from behind that glass and emulate the philosophy that we all have in this room, which is like they said before in the Bush administration, which we know is cringeworthy. No student left behind. You're not going to treat my kids as throwaway kids. Mm-hmm. We're going to provide them the supports that they need, and they're going to do well. And I don't care if you don't acknowledge me for it. I don't care if you don't include me with it. The most important thing is you have adopted it, and you're going to take the white ones and you're going to make this happen. And that's my legacy, really, because let me tell you, it wasn't easy. I'm not going to pretend like it was easy. It wasn't easy. I would go into my office, and they put me in the office on the 3rd floor, when a retention specialist is supposed to be on the same floor with their real administrators, right? And so, and I would be in there. It had no windows. It resembled a jail cell. There was just this door at the end with a little window that people used to peek in. This is a real testimony. Other administrators used to come and peek in my window to see what I did. Like, she's still here?
My God. And
I had people stop me on the elevator and ask me, what do you really do? Like, what do you do? And if it wasn't for my mentor and my own self And my mentor, I will not take this away from her. She's a little Italian white woman, but she has fire and spunk and spirit, and she believes in academic success just like I do. And she's like, you know what? We're gonna do it anyway. We're just gonna do it. And so when I came, there was this white guy at the end of the hallway. I'm on one side of the hallway and he's on the other side. And one day, many years later, he came to me. He's like, you know how I know you're good? You're good at what you do, Jill. I was like, what? He's like, every time. He's like, I used to watch students come into your office. He's like, they would look so dejected coming in, and then when they leave, they would look so spirited and they would look like they have a new sense of purpose. And he's like, I realize that you get it. And I'm like, well, we don't really want the yes massa, the validation that way, but we'll take it. And I was like, you have no idea how much sweat, blood, and tears, especially feeling inadequate and feeling out of place and feeling invalidated that I went through to make that happen. And I just had to say, I'm just gonna do what I have to do, and if they're gonna fire me, then it means that I don't belong here. And students like Billy and Corinne and Jade, it's like they are my testament that to say, and they don't even know this. They don't understand how important they are to my legacy as to what I went through there, to say that this meant something. When other people did not believe in me, and when other people invalidated me, how it is to have a boss who, no matter what you email him, he just never answers you? Mm-hmm. He never answered. And he never gave me instructions. He never gave me a mandate, a goal, nothing. So for them to sit here now and to be who they are, and to be UB students of color who are doing well, who are carrying out the mission of UB when people didn't believe in them, and they didn't even know people didn't believe in them. As an administrator, which is the question, and this is long-winded, but I come right back to this. As a teacher, when I stand in front of my class, I can be myself and I can connect with my students. But as an administrator, they cut me off at the knees in the beginning, and I had to fight, and I had to accelerate my beliefs and say, if they fire me for this, then I understand that this is not my place. I have to say that I have come a very long way. UB has come a very long way. And now I'm very proud. I'm proud of them. And I'm happy to say that we have prevailed against a lot of negativity and lack of a mission, and lack of a goal, and lack of foresight, and lack of interest, and lack of investment. And so even though they didn't know this themselves, I want them to understand how important their presence, even in this podcast, is for the future, for how far UB has come, and how much they represent the future of UB and the future of colleges and universities and students of color who didn't even know who their oppressor really was.
So, a little reflection of this podcast, you can see how impactful it is to have African American teachers and professors. As these professors shared, we don't know what they're going through in the background, but they're still fighting for us. Speechless.
You didn't know.
Yeah,
you did not know.
When you get this position, you're fighting to hold on for it. Fighting to hold on for the position, but you're fighting for others as well. And why is it like that? Why don't you ever get the support from the higher ups? And why are they always trying to tear it down? And it's just, I guess because we're Black, they don't ever want to see us succeed. They don't want to ever see us in positions of they don't want to ever see us in position of power or position of help. They just want to tear us down. And it's professors like you and teachers who continue to educate us, continue to build bonds with us, and y'all give us hope that there will be change when we enter our fields, that we can prosper, hopefully.
And also, thank you guys for being good people, because there's Black professors in your position who are not doing this and who do not care to do this, and teachers who just want the paycheck. So thank you guys for being genuine people.
Yeah, y'all give us an extra push, and that helps me personally, like, want to go further. Because some days I'm like, yeah, this ain't me. Like, I can't do this. Like, my entire family are all teachers. All the females in my family are teachers, and they have literally said, you know what, I'm a psych major, and I didn't choose to do education. You know what I'm saying? And they're like, oh, you know, you can't thrive. Like, you don't make no money in psych. And I'm like, my professors told me otherwise, actually. And I'm just like, I appreciate you very much, especially because Billy talks about Dr. Darnell all the time. And I'm like, shoot, she said the same thing, and I don't even have her. So it's just, that's giving us that push, knowing that in the background, we also don't get that support, even from people that we're supposed to get that support from. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Honestly, as the Cornerstone Talk podcast comes to an end, we want to thank all of the professors and teachers who came and spoke. I want to thank co-hosts, Corinne and Jada. We want to thank them. Yeah, like, comment, and subscribe. Turn on the post notification. This is the end of the podcast. We out.
Happy Black History Month to everybody. I just want to say a special thank you to all the Black educators out there. Thank you guys so much for showing us that we can actually be what we want to be. Thank you for the representation. Thank you for the love. And thank you for continuing to push us to be our better selves. Thank you.
I just wanted to put my thanks out to all the Black educators out there, especially the Black educators that are close to me, which includes Zari Elliott and my dad, Lyndon Ford.
Thank you, Black educators, for being patient and supportive when others are not.
Thank you for all the Black educators. I feel like it's important for us to know our history. And without our beloved Black educators, I feel like we wouldn't know as much as we know now. And I wouldn't be the person I am today without them. Thank you.
Yo, what's good? It's Rich. I just wanted to hop on and say thank you to all the Black educators, teachers, professors out there for doing what y'all do. Without y'all, honestly, I couldn't be in the same situation I am in right now. So I just want to say thank you.
Thank you to all the educators, innovators, and trailblazers that have come before and set a way and just allowed Black excellence to follow along the path in order to succeed, because without them, what we do today and how we succeed as a Black community would be so much difficult and nearly impossible. So thank you to all.
I like to thank all the Black educators that I had in my life, because it made me realize that there's people like me with my skin tone who are doing stuff out here, and it really encouraged me to like remain in school, keep my head down, and rally out the storm.
It used to feel so